That's great. Absolutely. So you mentioned being on Rap City, Pump It Up, Yo MTV Raps, the album is out. How is life changing for Ali D personally?
uh, well, um, girls, that definitely changed a lot. Um, got a lot more girls, trying to hang out with me, which was cool, and fun. Um, you know, I'll tell you, definitely lost all of my friends that I grew up with. That's for sure. So my friends were, you know, black, Puerto Rican, and Dominican. Those were my friends. Um, and uh, I'll say that for me, becoming a producer, artist, businessman, in music and fundamentally based in hip hop, I realized that when I was with the next school, subconsciously I felt like I couldn't be who I really was. Um, so it was also a huge growth time during that because I look back at interviews that I did during that time. I look at the UMTV interview and I'm literally like, oh my God, like who is this dude? Um, the way I was talking, the way I was behaving, I and by the way, when I was there, it's not like I was like, oh, I'm a hip hop dude, so I need to speak in this tone and yo, I'll battle him, yo, and but when I look at it, it's sort of shocking because I certainly didn't realize I was doing it. It was like I don't know, insecurity or maybe I was embarrassed about being a white kid that grew up on the Upper East Side of Manhattan and went to private school or whatever. I don't know what it was, but what did happen is that as I progressed, I realized that, you know what? Like, if you don't like me for who I am, well, then so be it. That's all good. Um, and I became more comfortable being in my skin in, a predominantly not my skin industry.
Right.
So it was an interesting growth time, really. Very interesting period. I mean, my mom, was diagnosed with breast cancer when I was, like right before that moment. So not having my mom there was crazy. My dad was really not around. So, for all intents and purposes, I was kind of like on my own, doing my thing, like making money, shopping demos, just, trying to get it done.
Right. Fast forward to the car wash. You said after that show, you knew it was over. At what point did you know it was over? What
So
specifically was going on that you knew this
I'll
was
tell
it?
you, I'll tell you honestly, it was so crazy, and I would love to see if there's any video or photos of this thing. If there's anybody out there with photos or video, I'd love to see it. Basically, my partner got smashed before the show, and I didn't know. I thought he was all right, and we went out on stage. He forgot all his rhymes. So like I look like yeah, dude, and there were like 2,000 people in there, and it was intimate, and you got Ed and Dre co-hosting. I got Brand Nubian standing on the stage watching the show, and I'm just like, oh boy, and it was the worst performance ever. It turned out that uh, Zone TDK was friendly with oh my God, Ultramagnetic, lead rapper.
Cool, Keith?
Yes, Cool Key. I like get off stage and like 5 minutes later, like Zone comes up to me and he's like, "Yo, you stole my rhymes." And I was like, "That's because you weren't rapping, like you were blasted on there." And basically, him and Cool Keith were like, "Yo, you stole his rhymes because his rhymes are better than yours." And I was like, you know what? I'm out. Like, see you later. And I'm literally, I just darted towards the exit. And I called my manager the next day, and I was like, you know what? I want to be responsible for myself. And if I'm late to a meeting or if I fuck up a show, I want to blame me. I don't want to have a partner anymore that I got to carry. Just in terms of responsibility.
Right.
So the group broke up. And by the way, we didn't talk. Me and Zone didn't talk for probably, I'd say 10, 15 years.
Mm.
And then finally, we got together and he gave me a big hug and it was all good.
So where does Ali D find itself at this point, and what happened with the Chrysalis deal?
So we get dropped from Chrysalis. So here's the funny thing. Like when people are like, oh, we got off the label, or oh, we got released. Like, dude, you got dropped. It's okay. It's okay to say you got dropped. It's all right. So we got dropped from Chrysalis. I still had my deal with MCA Music Publishing. And MCA basically came to me and said, listen, we think you're a super talented producer. Like we wanna stick with you. We wanna keep you signed to us and like link you with different artists and producers and all that stuff. So during that time, I connect with this other white rapper named Kid Panic. Kid Panic is this dude out of Long Island, hilarious. He looked like this one actor that was on 21 Jump Street. Not the lead dude. What's his name?
Johnny Depp.
Not Johnny Depp. The other dude.
I know you're talking about.
Yeah, there was another guy on that show, and he looked just like him. So literally, I connect with him, and I produce his demos. He convinces me that like he's gonna be it. I'm thinking like Vanilla Ice is out. Let's squash him. Let's come up with a great dancey pop record. So I have this idea. I want to take Baby We Can Do SOS Band. And I want to sample that and put a crazy beat underneath it and make it a record. We make it a record. He shops it. I don't shop it. He calls me up and he's like, "Yo, Soul MCA wants to give me a record deal." Now, I knew about Soul MCA because of Hank Shockley and the Bomb Squad. Obviously, as a producer, the Bomb Squad was like NERD, or if Timberland had a clique, right? They were it. So I'm like, that's amazing. So like he's working his deal out, and we're in the studio making more demos, and he hits me up. He's like, "Yo, Hank wants to meet you." And I'm like, "Hank wants to meet me? Why does Hank want to meet me?" He's like, he really loves the production. He wants to meet you. So I was like, shaking. I was like, oh my God, my hand's shaking. I'm like, I remember going up to Hank's office up at Soul. It was downtown in Manhattan. And, I'm basically like bowing to him, when I walk in the room. I was 21 years old.
Can you give us a time frame around
Yeah,
this time?
I was 21. So this is 91.
Okay.
Like beginning of 91. And I'm sitting with Hank. He's sitting across, his desk is there. I'm sitting in front of his desk. And he's like loving the production. He's like, "Yo, I think your production's fly." And I'm like, "Thank you so much." And he says to me, he's like, "Listen," he's like, "I need a remix for Public Enemy. And I want to give you a test." He's like, I'll pay you $1,500 for the remix, and I want to give you a test. So, by the way, I'm freaking out. I'm like, oh my God, I'm remixing a PE record? Like, are you kidding me right now? I remember going into the studio with the 2-inch masters of the song. I can't remember the name of the song for the life of me. I was trying to think of it. I can't remember the name of the song, but I go into the studio, and I actually use a studio that they used to use out in Long Island. and I'm in the studio and I'm pulling up the 2-inch, and I can't lock to the 2-inch. I can't get the tempo on tape. So Stevette, who was a legendary mix engineer, Beastie Boys, LL, Houdini, LL, PE, every record that, like, every legendary record, Stevette mixed. So Stevette mixed the Next School's record, my album, and he and I became friendly. So I call Stevette because he's the expert, and I'm like, yo, dude, I'm like, what will you charge to help me out here, come out and get me locked to this tape, because I can't lock to tape. He's like, $1,500. So basically, the $1,500 I made went to him, which was fine. He finally got me locked to tape. I did the remix. Chuck loved the remix. Hank loved the remix. And I had a subsequent meeting with Hank back down at Soul. And he says to me, I remember like yesterday, he says to me, he's like, listen, we got a bunch of projects coming up. We got this movie that we're about to do, and we got a bunch of projects. He's like, I'm looking for another dude for the Bomb Squad. He's like, I'd like you to join the Bomb Squad. And literally, I was like, honestly, I wanted to faint, because again, for a little producer like me, that's the big come up, right?
Right.
So the next, 2.5 years, I was with Hank, which was crazy.
So we're talking 91. Some of the acts coming through there were Son of Berserk and Young Black,
100%.
Young Black Teenagers. Did you have any interaction with those groups?
100%.
All right. There's a story in there.
There's definitely a story in there. So, I would take the train out to Freeport, Long Island, which is where Hank's studio was, 510. I forget the name of the street, but we called the studio 510 because that was the number. And Freeport, by the way, in 91, 92 was not it was hood back then. So I would take the train out, get out to the studio. They literally had me in a room that was like a closet, and in the closet was a Technics 1200 turntable, a Kai S900 sampler, and a JBL speaker to the right of me, a mono speaker, but a big DJ speaker that was broken and like stuck on volume 20. So I had no volume control except crazy loud. And it was like in my ear because the room was so small. And literally every hour, either Chuck or somebody would bring a crate of records, throw the crate of records in, and my job was to find the hot joints, the hot pieces, the break beats, the horn stabs, the guitar licks, listening to Hendrix live albums, grabbing things. Son of Berserk was always there. Chuck's dad worked out of there because they did all the PE merch, Mr. Ridenhour. It was an unbelievable experience, obviously. And by the way, I thought I was the biggest shit ever, right? I was like, I'm Bomb Squad. You can't fuck with me,
Right.
And it was kind of crazy because, as I was, working my way through the business on the executive side, all of a sudden, at that time I pick up the phone. I'm like, hey, it's Ali D from the Bomb Squad. People are getting on the phone like real quick. I was like, oh, this is how this works. Okay. I'm Bomb Squad, It was an amazing time. I was right there. Listen, I joined at the best time possible because they were about to do the Juice film, and you want to talk about history and an experience. That was unreal. I was negotiating my production deal with the Bomb Squad at the time that we were working on Juice. And I worked on the 3 records that matter on the soundtrack. At least to me, they matter. And that's Know the Ledge, Enough Respect, Don't Be Afraid. To me, those are the three records that matter on the record. I mean, Uptown Anthem is cool, but you know what I'm saying. And you know, the history of the creation of those records is amazing. So there's one story that's an amazing story that I love. I love telling young cats, you know, who are just getting into hip hop, and it's about Don't Be Afraid, about how Don't Be Afraid was created. And you know, Hank, the dynamics in the Bomb Squad was kind of crazy. So I had joined the squad right after Eric Sadler had left. So Eric Sadler had left, and Eric Sadler had a lot of swag in his beat making abilities. So, you know, Hank, I guess, felt like I got to get somebody to replace Eric, or I need another teammate. So when I joined, the composition of the Bomb Squad really was Chuck, Keith Shockley, Hank Shockley, Gary G. Wiz, and then me. And I was like the junior member, right? I was the, you know, I was the little guy. And I was a little guy though with a big personality. And a little guy that loved socializing, and a little guy that loved being in meetings and talking to people. Where, you know, Gary, by the way, Gary was also Young Black Teenagers manager. Gary was, and listen, much respect to him. If he hears that I called him stiff, it's all good. I love you, dude. But he was a stiff dude. Like he even the way he shook hands was stiff. He's like, hey, how you know, like it was like all stiff, you know. And he was like the main beat maker, you know, for the clique. And then there was Keith, who had a lot of swag just naturally to him. And then there was Hank, who was like the director, right? Hank was the one that put it all together. Hank was the one that would show up to the studio in the last hour and change levels and tweak things and stuff like that. He was the brain. He was the director. So I took a lot of pride being with the Bomb Squad, and I wore it, you know, I wore it right here, like, you know, boom, like it's my shield, right? So I was reading a Billboard article one day, and it was an article done on Freeze, the producer Freeze, who did Sex You Up, Color Me Bad, you know, all these things. And I remember reading the article, and he said something like, you know, I consider myself like the musical Bomb Squad. And I took offense to it. I was like, what? I was like, what are you talking about? And I remember being with Hank right after that, and I was like, Hank, why are no pop acts having us do records on their albums? Why are we only doing remixes for Janet Jackson and this and that? Like why aren't we bigger than who we even are right now? And why do people think we can't make music? Why do people think we only make beats? Because I didn't think we only made beats, right? But people considered the Bomb Squad really, they're beat makers, right? They were making revolutionary beats. So Hank literally was like, I don't really know any keyboard players, you know, because they were sampling everything. We sampled everything. We didn't have live musicians on anything. So I was like, well, I know some keyboard players. Floyd Fisher, who co-produced the Next School album with me, was an incredible keyboard player. So I was like, I got some keyboard players. So literally, when we came up with the idea for Don't Be Afraid with Aaron Hall, I was like, okay, listen, what's the hardest beat we got right now? The hardest beat we had right now was Can't Trust This. And the beat was hard. The bass line was crazy. It was a rugged, stomping groove, right? I was like, let's take that beat and let's put piano behind it and let's make chords to it. Let's create a music bed, and that's going to be the song for Aaron Hall. And I remember bringing Floyd in. Floyd came out to 510. We got the beat up off the SB 1200, you know, from Can't Trust It, and literally comes up with those chords. He's playing those chords, you know. And I remember Keith Shockley walks into the room while we playing the chords, and Keith is literally like, this is some corny ass shit. And Keith storms out of the room because, to Keith, hearing piano chords like that, Keith was not an R&B dude, right? He didn't want to hear R&B.
Right.
So we finished the record. I remember Hank used to take me to all the meetings with him because I was good in meetings. And, I always thought that Gary didn't like that, that I was always traveling with Hank, I was going to LA with Hank to work with Juvenile Committee, or I was going to Hank when we had dinner with Big Daddy Kane, or I was going with Hank when we went to go see Aaron Hall. And we went to go see Aaron out at the Galaxy out in Fort Lee, New Jersey. He had 2 big Rottweilers because he, loved dogs, and I think he trained them at the time. And I remember we played the beat for Aaron that day, and Aaron was like, "I love this record." He's like, "I'm gonna write to it, and let's go." And I remember him in the studio when we were recording him. It was amazing. I was fascinated because Aaron literally would record 8 vocal tracks, like just one after another. He'd stack them, and I was like, "Why do you do that?" He's like, "Teddy Riley taught me that." In Guy. When he was producing Guy, and of course, you gotta understand, these are all my legends, right?
Right.
At the time. So I'm actually sitting on the couch with Aaron. Meanwhile, by the way, the reason they call him the Nasty Man is he's taking out Polaroids he got from girls from the night before, and he's showing them. I'm like, who lives like this? You know what I mean? I'm like, this is amazing. And we did all of that tracking at Unique Studios, which I don't believe Unique might have turned into Quad. I'm not sure. I mean, I've never been to Quad, but it's in the same building. So, it was an amazing time. I remember, in the middle of a Big Daddy Kane session when we were doing Enough Respect, and Hank could never say no to me. Hank and I were similar in the respect. Listen, I don't want to put myself on Hank's level because Hank is a revolutionary producer, executive. So I'm not saying I'm like Hank in that respect, but I'm a director as well. So Hank could never say no to me, and obviously I could never say no to Hank. But I remember the day we were doing the Big Daddy Kane session, Kane is taking a break, and Gary G. Wiz calls me into the vocal booth. And the mic is off, and he goes, with his stiff self, he goes, so, what are you expecting, off this album, off the Juice album? And I'm like, what do you mean, what am I expecting? I'm expecting, like a point on each song that I produced and some writing, like normal. And he's like, well, is your deal done with us? And I go, well, it's not done yet because it's not right. And I'm not going to sign a deal that's not right. It'll get done, but it's not right yet. And he said, well, look, he goes, I don't know about points and all that. He's like, I think you'll get some writing. Not sure how many songs you're going to get writing on. He goes, but I do think I probably have the biggest check you've ever gotten in my hands right now. And he hands me a check for $25,000. And now, I'm 21 years old, getting a check for $25,000. I'm like, I'm rich, I think I went out and bought a used Porsche. I did everything you're not supposed to do. Right.
Right.
But I took the check. The album came out. I got writing on Enough Respect. That's it. It's all good. It was a learning lesson. And by the way, I was also paying my dues, which I have learned to respect about paying your dues. It's all good. So I continued with the Bomb Squad after that, probably for another year and a half. And then I got the crazy artist itch again. And I was like, I need to rap. And this is almost 93. I'm like, I got to rap again. I'm looking at Marky Mark. I'm like, yo, I could kill that dude. I'm like, he ain't got nothing. So I go in the studio at MCA, because as a writer at MCA, I had access to the studio. And I come up with this record, Who's the Flavor? I sampled an old Whispers record. I put a crazy beat on it. And everybody that hears it thinks it's like a hit, you know. And at the time that I finished that record, Hank wanted me to produce on Young Black Teenager's sophomore record. So I meet with Young Black Teenagers, and obviously I knew them, right? They were always up at the studio, Cameron and all of them, Tommy Never. And so I play them. I played them 3 records, and one of them, Who's the Flavor? And those 3 records, I go, these are not available. I said, but if you like them, I could do ones like them. I said, but these are the ones that are available. And I played them a whole bunch of other ones. They're basically like, we want Who's the Flavor. And I'm like, you can't have Who's the Flavor because that's going to be my single. And it turns into a whole bunch of drama. I mean, like literally, like beef. You know, like gun-toting beef. Like at a concert, I know they're there. I know they got their dudes. I'm bringing my dudes. You know, 2 5s are in our boots. You know, I mean, it was like literally like beef.
So who was Hank rolling with at this time?
Oh, he was with them.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, he dropped me like a bad habit.
Wow.
Yeah. He dropped me like a bad habit because basically what happened was they couldn't have the record. So they came up with another record, I think, called Roll with the Flavor. And that ended up being their second single. We got into like a legal matter. And basically I realized I can't afford to pay for these lawyers. So I settled with them. I think the settlement was like, it couldn't be their first single. Their first single was Tap the Bottle, which, by the way, they stole that record too. Tap the Bottle was a stolen record too, not from me. It was stolen from a group called Renaissance out of Long Island. It was these 2 cats out of Long Island, and like one of them died. So like, I guess they thought they could just take the record, but literally it's the identical hook. Tap, except it's slower. It goes tap the bottle and twist the cap, tap the bottle. If anybody's out there can do some research, the group's called Renaissance, and I think it's called Twist the Cap. It's not called Tap the Bottle.
Wow.
So they stole that record too.